This Lent, we walk toward the heart of the Christian story, tracing a spiritual movement: return, trust, promise, thirst, sight, life, surrender. Each week's scripture invites us to examine where we are in relation to the gospel itself. Where are we resistant, afraid to trust? Where are we thirsty? Where do we need resurrection? Lent is not a season of spiritual performance, but one of actually drawing and returning to Christ. So we begin Lent on Ash Wednesday, and we begin with dust. In Lent, we're called to walk an ever-narrowing road that's actually made of dust, of us and everything. And it's a road that leads to a path that terminates at the cross, with the only way through the eye of a needle, that narrow gate for the repentant. Those attending on Ash Wednesday were marked with ashes and assured that God breathes life into things that seem so unworthy, ungrateful, or unlikely. So we're still walking side by side. As I said on Ash Wednesday, we're all astride next to each other, plenty of elbow room. We've even got our wagon with all the stuff we like to bring on trips. We've had time to pack. We're all good to go. But we see something in the distance that's coming up. That pilgrimage road today is going to wind through the wilderness. Now, a wilderness can be a site of barrenness, sure. But it can also be a panacea that's teeming with life. A paradox like this is evident throughout the gospel, including how we try to hold on to power that we don't have, right? In the creation reading, humanity is trying to grasp for control in this clothing-optional commune in which they find themselves. Not so with Christ, though. Not once, not twice, but 3 times he refuses to grasp at the finite and temporal. And that's a great message for us in Lent. The road narrows not because we're self-improvement, but because you're learning what it is you should in fact be refusing. So let's park for a minute around this idea of grasping and refusing, because it's been around for as long as we've had opposable thumbs. When we're a child and we want something, we grasp for it. Grasping is very omnidirectional. It's like our desire's version of a shotgun blast. And that desire, though, it can be pernicious and it can be underhanded. And we can grasp in subtle ways too. Consider the serpent from the gospel, from the creation, or the reading from Genesis today. This serpent isn't planning a rebellion. He just sashays right by, stirs the pot, walks away. He says, did God really say you couldn't, skim a little off the top? I mean, it's going in the trash anyway. How doth temptation start? With the tiniest notion of a little subtle distortion in our world. We start to doubt God's unconditional generosity. We see the garden as this place we can't get, with this wall separating whatever's going on in heaven from the DMZ in which we find ourselves, trying to eke out a survival day to day. And over that wall, though, we hear something essential, something pleasing to all the senses. The issue here is not forbidden fruit, but it's misplaced trust. The issue is our concern that what will get us to heaven is in fact enough. Is it enough? And when we're unsure, what do? We start grasping for straws. We start scrambling for footing. Anything that gives us control. But when God created the garden, and added two humans to the mix. The problem wasn't in being intellectual. The problem was not in knowing good and evil. The problem is in how the knowledge was used. In this case, to become like God, to have your own moral code that you follow, one that helps make sense of the gray world that you live in. Does that sound familiar? When we do that, though, we seek autonomy outside of the communion that is our church, as well as God's intention for us. And this can lead to us isolating ourselves, of pulling off at the first stop on the pilgrimage just to take care of some things. But good news, there is a counterweight to this burden, and we find it described by Paul in his letter to the Romans. Paul broadens the aperture of this creation story and Adam to cosmic levels by including Christ, the church, and us. See, a central theme of Paul's writing in Romans is that Christ is the second Adam. That is, through one man, Adam, Adama, that's actually Hebrew for earth. Through Adam came sin and death, but through another man, Jesus, came grace and life. And how did they get there? For Adam, it was in grasping. For Jesus, it was in trusting. Adam taught us the futility of clutching at certainty, but Jesus taught us how to thrive with faith, and both choices lie at your feet today. One way to choose Jesus and to continue on this pilgrimage is to recognize that all of this suffering is not punishment, but it's preparation. It's training. It is getting you ready for being a person that is marked by the devil. Not to scare you, but to instill a spiritual discipline that helps you live out your baptismal covenant when those temptations do come. And Jesus prepares us in three ways by showing how to combat temptation's angry flame. First is the temptation to use power for self-preservation by turning stones into bread. But Jesus refuses to let hunger define who he is. Where he would grasp, or where we would grasp to survive, Jesus releases to trust. The second temptation is the one to pump yourself up. Make a spectacle of yourself. Spectacle. It doesn't matter. You're God. The devil, though, manufactures certainty here. He creates a situation that's tailor-made for Jesus and his authority. But Jesus refuses to test God because trust does not demand proof. And if there's anything that Paul's life, or Pat's life, John's life, Caitlin's life, anyone that we're thinking of right now, anybody, they can teach us this. Trust is its own proof. Trust is its own proof. And we need that trust to make it through a life where, in true fashion of passion, there are no shortcuts. And that leads to the third temptation. The devil offers power free of suffering. In return, Jesus must surrender his authority. This is the famous shortcut to glory idea, where we can put the crown on without really learning about the cross. But stepping into relationship with the cross is going to narrow the road before you. Today, though, it just starts with refusing what looks easier or what might feel good now. Now, perhaps you are starting to feel that road constricting a little bit. When we began, you couldn't even see the shoulders of the road. It was so wide. We're still on a road, but now we start to see trees sticking out of the road. There's grass growing between the cracks. You just start to make out abandoned cars under these sand dunes as you're passing by. But if you stare in just the right way and just the right light, you can still see the path under the grass. And it starts to dawn on you that the things you thought were important at the outset of this journey are becoming less so. So it is with life. And that includes the efficiencies of our age, because here on out through Lent, we're on foot. And it's right here when you realize you can't go further with all your possessions that a pattern emerges. It's that in the garden, humanity grasped and lost life. But in the wilderness, Christ released and restored life. Adam hid in the bushes in his leafy print Speedo while Jesus stood out like a sore thumb. A sore thumb. Adam blamed, but Christ obeyed. Adam ate fruit. Jesus refused bread. This is an inflection point where we must choose between our own security or the security that we get from faith in God. And if you're the type to see the narrowing road as less choice, well, perhaps you could just try to see it as Christ and the decision to follow him actually just becoming more obvious. Your relationship with Christ, it's a dance only known between you and God. But I'm asking you to consider the times you were tempted to lead or to make God move to your rhythm. Where have you been tempted to turn stones into bread, to demand proof? Take the shortcut. Whether it's the front of an altar, the front of a home, or a battle, you have a decision to make during Lent. Are you going to put down the need for people to see what you're doing for God? The narrowing road is not made of viral videos that are people doing superhuman things. No, the narrowing road is made of the person who decided this morning to not take a drink, and they haven't yet today, to which I say congratulations. It's a person who's going to step into this new Trinity Lenten tradition we started last year, finding that one thing in your life you've never quite been able to put down. You all know what it is. And to carry it around, plainly visible to you for the entire 40 days. And as those 40 days go by, you reflect on it and you hold it in your hands and you look at it and you say, how has that thing changed over time that I've been holding on to it? How has it changed me? And then, at the end of the Lent season, on Easter Sunday, you lay that burden, that blockage that's been present for so long between you and a restored friendship, or whatever it is, to lay it down and walk out of here free, unfettered, and forgiven. To be that type of person takes trust. It takes dependence, and it takes a slow obedience. Not cynicism, not grasping, not choices that are driven by fear. But the journey of 1,000 miles continues or begins with one step. Maybe this will help. I don't know about you, but I take great comfort that after this celestial sparring match that Jesus went through, the angels came and ministered to him. So, for those of you who have ever uttered the phrase, all will be well, or you will be comforted, you have expressed a hint of the hue, of the aroma of that gospel message. And that can sustain all of us as we start to feel these pangs of loneliness as we walk this road, hinting at what this journey actually really means for our discipleship. But we are not alone. We are never alone. Christ walks with us, having already created the path that leads us back home. And so as this path narrows, so too the once ubiquitous shortcuts. You're inching ever closer to a decision point. Will you trust where Adam grasped? Will you obey where fear and anger rise in you? And will you please remember that you are not walking alone, that there are others with you who can help, and some who might help you? Some of them might be Christ. Some of them might be an angel. Some of them might be God in the form of your enemy. Christ calls them friend, even as you sometimes call them devil.